back. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday morning means Ross Gregory is here. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning, Steve. Morning, everyone.
Good to see you, mate. And the tickets are on sale for Wembley, Ross. It's interesting to watch the social media stuff going on about this. I don't want to drag it on too much. We've spoken a lot about tickets over the last couple of days. Just want to ask you your feelings on the allocation and how they've done it. Seems to be the consensus of opinion seems to be that a lot of people feel they could have done it slightly better. They haven't got it far wrong. But maybe season ticket holders should have been first, like they had been in the past. What's your views, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where everyone's going to have an opinion on it, and whatever the club had done, they wouldn't have been able to keep everybody happy. Simply, the clamour for tickets, the demand for them far outstrips the amount of tickets, the allocation that Newcastle have been given. I don't think there was a silver bullet here. I really don't think there was a way of doing it that would have pleased everybody, that would have satisfied everybody. Looking at it, kind of trying to look at it objectively, I think it's as close as they could have got to being fair in satisfying the majority of people, and being fair to those who've attended games, who've had season tickets, who've built up their points. Their loyalty points. There wasn't a perfect way of doing it, but I think it's as close as what they could have done. But like I say, not everybody's going to be happy. Some people are going to miss out who feel that they deserve tickets and have supported and followed the club for X amount of years. Unfortunately, there's only 33,000 tickets, and like I say, we could be looking at it's selling double that, probably triple that. Newcastle could have potentially sold out Wembley themselves. Never mind with the Man United fans in there and the corporates and everything else like that. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I really feel for the club on this one. I think there's very little wiggle room for them, and I think it's a fairly fair way that they've allocated the Wembley tickets.
Yeah, look, it's always going to be, bone of contention. And, I just think ultimately they've tried to reward people who've been to the Carabao Cup games. But I think when you see individual circumstances, I'm getting inundated, as you would imagine, from people who've got maybe lines of complaint. One guy in particular had been a season ticket holder for 39 years through no fault of his own, work, family. Hasn't been able to get to a Carabao Cup game this season, feels it's incredibly unfair. The 39 years of loyalty means nothing because somebody who has bought a season ticket when the takeover went through and has been to the Carabao Cup games this year is allowed to go and get a ticket before him. Now, ultimately, I would agree. And again, it's only when you get the facts and you work it all out. It looks like there's 35,000 season ticket holders. I've seen, again, an unsubstantiated email screenshot going around by one of the well-known ITK accounts saying that it's from somebody at the ticket office confirming that there's 35,000 season ticket holders. Now, if that's the case, that means that everybody in that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday applications should all get tickets. So that means the guy who has got the complaint that's emailed me will get a ticket. But I guess he's not going to get the first choice of tickets. You know what I mean? So again, it's an impossible situation. And the new owners will get a level of criticism from certain parts of the fan base for this, I guess.
Yeah, there will. There would have been criticism whatever they've done. If they'd gone just on pure season tickets and nothing to do with Carabao Cup attendance this season, they would have had criticism for that. They would have had criticism if they didn't take into account the fans who travel to away games and loyalty. You know, if you come down to Southampton, for example, or down to Tranmere, there was a really difficult way of doing it. I sincerely hope that that pretty much every season ticket holder will get one. Every season ticket holder won't apply for a Wembley ticket. You know, there'll be some people who don't want to go, who can't go for whatever reason. But at the same time, you know, those people who can't go or don't want to go, I'm guessing the majority will still apply for them and then look to pass them on to friends or family or relatives or whatever it is. You know, I know a couple of people who've got tickets because they've taken the season ticket of somebody who didn't want to go as well. So I'm hoping that with everything that comes out, yeah, I've heard the same as you, Steve. 35,000 season ticket holders. I was told that, you know, pretty much around the semi-final date as well. So before even the allocations came out, I was told that Newcastle had around 35,000 season ticket holders. I don't know what the makeup of that is in terms of, you know, what corporate element is involved in that, if any, or if that's added on, because obviously Newcastle will need to satisfy some of their sponsors and corporate season ticket holders as well. So it's a really, really difficult job. It's a really difficult balancing act, made even worse, obviously, or even more difficult by the fact that it's 24 years since Newcastle were at this stage. I've been thinking back, Steve. I can't remember. I don't know if you can, but I can't remember what the situation was like back in 98, 99.
Can it?
Nah, I can't. I don't know if it's because there wasn't there wouldn't have been the volume of season ticket holders then. Maybe you know, whether there was only kind of the 30,000 ish and not everybody applied, but I can't remember having any issues. That said, there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't all these social media accounts with everybody's gripes and complaints and or you know, or the opposite kind of cropping up, and you being like more aware of it. So, but I can't remember how they allocated them in 98.
I do. I mean, just speaking to different people, it was season ticket holders. I'm not even sure we had the membership. We didn't have the membership scheme then. So, you know, the other bone of contention, I guess, from some people's point of view, is those people who bought the original Platinum Club tickets were promised by Sir John Hall that they would have cup final tickets for 99 years. Now, I guess because we've been through a change of ownership not once but twice since those days, that unless it's on black and white, you know, unless it's on a piece of paper that somebody owns, then that's not gonna you know, be honoured. I wouldn't have thought. But again, if those people are still in those seats and still in those places, Ross, I would imagine that they'll probably will get tickets for Wembley anyway. You know.
Thought, but like I say, I think the majority of season ticket holders, if they want to go, will pretty much get there. It might be a little bit tight once you.
Yeah. Ross, I'm going to let you switch to your hotspot. Ross, your internet's died, literally gone there. So I'll let you switch to the hotspot. John Askew says there've been developments regarding the land behind the Gallowgate. Haven't seen overhead shots of the stadium. There might be scope to expand to a reasonable capacity at St James's Park. The listed buildings take up just over half of the east side of the ground. That means potentially almost one half could be developed in theory. That's huge, because it could get capacity up to a decent figure. It might look strange from above, but that's not significant compared to allowing thousands more to get in. It looks lopsided as it is. John, the ground renovation stories continue to circulate. And to be honest, I have mentioned it on the podcast before. You know, back in the days of David Stonehouse as chief executive, I did see the plans about potentially purchasing the buildings behind the East Stand, and you know, it was doable. They would incorporate the listed part of the building within the infrastructure of any new stand on the East Stand side, and you know, they would be allowed to build there. You know, there's been reports that Saudi businessman owns the buildings now, so potentially that could happen. And obviously the Strawberry Place development has suddenly come to a standstill, although we believe there are talks, I guess, Ross, being, you know, had to try and resurrect that. So ground renovation and changes are still very much on the agenda. Anything at the Chronicle's office about this? And I know the Chronicle are keeping an eye on it. What's the latest state of affairs with Strawberry development that you're hearing?
Yeah, so I think that one obviously it came back into the public eye last week with the news that the North of Tyne Combined Authority weren't going to that had been kind of promised that I think it's around about 3 million in public money to cover a kind of what they call a viability gap in the regeneration of Strawberry Place. So the North of Tyne Combined Authority have kind of or that plan because obviously we're in a different.
Yeah, Ross, your internet's away again, mate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run the ads, mate, and then I'm going to come back because it's spoiling a good interview with you today. There's so many good topics that I want to cover. So I'm going to take you out and I'll let you come back in, sort your internet out, but I'm going to play the ads now. Thanks as always to our sponsors, Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickys.co.uk, email info@mrvickys.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to Blowhole Brewery. You can find them at blowholebrewery.co.uk. Beers brewed on the River Tyne. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK Coach Holidays, based in Morpeth, telephone 01670 362 460 and mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls, looking after you on your tour. Thanks also to 3 Property, who specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the North East. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give the guys a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property, or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wales and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the videos and the technology side of things. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. Hit the thumb up to like the channel and click share to your social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. If you want to become a member, you pay a £25 one-off fee, and you can go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and find membership pack, or put your smartphone over the QR code, and it will take you straight there. If you subscribe, we do give you a free car sticker. All you need to do is email john@nufcmatters.com, and he'll post you one out. We also support the food bank on this channel, nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. You'll find the match day bucket where you can make a virtual donation. We've also got some events coming up over the next couple of months. First off, we've got an evening with Steve Howie at the Tyneside Irish Centre, Friday the 24th of February. Tickets are available from our website, nufcmatters.com, and they are priced £15, not $50, as you can see on the poster. An evening with Nobby Solano is also at the Tyneside Irish Centre, Saturday the 25th of March. Tickets are £15. Book now at nufcmatters.com. And an evening with Frank Clark and John Gibson, Thursday the 20th of April, again at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £15 and you book now at nufcmatters.com. Supermac and John Gibson will also be at Felling Cricket Club on the 16th of February. To buy tickets for that, contact the venue direct. We've got a whole host of t-shirts available from our website, nufcmatters.com. Gives you plenty of ideas for presents, for birthdays, anniversaries, you name it. Get your Anthony Gordon t-shirts and your Wembley t-shirts today. That looks better, Ross.
We're back on. We're back. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's not the picture's pixelating a little bit, but it's better than it was. So that's great. So yeah, the list. Look, let's move on away from tickets because I know people are getting sick of us discussing tickets. It is what it is, and good luck to everybody in their, the rush to get them this week. But the ground. What are you hearing about the ground, Ross?
Yeah. So I don't know how much you heard of me before I stopped.
We heard nothing.
Fair enough. So the North of Tyne Combined Authority have been promising that they would fund the kind of the viability gap in the regeneration of Strawberry Place, which you put money, 3.5 million of public money, and that was to kind of fund the gap and help develop that Strawberry Place with offices, with hotels, the whole regeneration of that place. Now, because of everything that's happened over the last 12, 18 months in terms of cost of living and the financial situation around the globe, but obviously impacting in the northeast as well. The North of Tyne Mayor, I think Jamie Driscoll, has decided that they won't be funding that gap now. They won't be putting 3.5 million into that gap, and that development now is on hold. So it's absolutely on hold. There's nothing that is going to be moved forward with it initially. So, what does that mean for Newcastle United? Well, there's potential that the club, the owners of the land, the Newcastle Council can now come together and have a conversation about what is the best use of that land and whether it can go back into ownership of Newcastle United, whether it's something that they can now use to redevelop the Gallagher end. It's a really interesting development that's happened from a point where we thought that there was no hope, if you like, for developing the ground on that side because the land had been sold, because of the funding gap, because that the money isn't there now to regenerate that bit of land with the flats and the hotels and everything else like that. It becomes an option again for Newcastle United potentially to buy that land and redevelop St James's on that Gallagher side. I think it's a huge story. I really do. I think it's a massive story. We know that Newcastle need to extend and revamp St James's. We know that the issues that are there around the ground with the listed buildings on one side and the issues that we had at the Gallagher. So for there to be a chink of light, I think is a huge story, huge potential, potentially good news for fans and for Newcastle United, and fingers crossed that the relevant parties can come together and work out some sort of compromise.
Yeah, it's a need. It's something we need. We need ground redevelopment at Newcastle. There's no doubt about it. And there will be a clamour for tickets. And if Newcastle become more successful over the coming years, and that demand is only going to grow. But we have to do it sensibly. We have to do it properly. So let's see exactly what happens over the course of the next few months. Certainly with some redevelopment. Anyway, big interview today in the Evening Chronicle with Allan Saint-Maximin. First of all, who conducted the interview, Ross?
I've not seen, but I'm guessing it. I've not seen this one, but I'm guessing it would have been Lee Ryder who would have done the piece.
I don't know. It was put out last night across the Evening Chronicle, so I thought you might have had it to hand. But it's interesting quotes in there about from his perspective when he comes into the team, he plays. He plays his heart out, and when he's not in the team, he prays that they're going to win. If we're going to go into the Champions League, we're going into the Champions League together. I've got to be honest, a lot of the words in there, words are words, actions are actions, I'm just curious to know what your opinion is with ASM at the moment. I mean, if you haven't had a chance to read the article, it's well worth a read, but it's hard on the sleeve kind of stuff. But I'm still not seeing that on the pitch.
I know it's he's always going to be a figure that divides opinion. I think he's bought into the area. I think I've not spoken to him personally, but from speaking to journalists who do speak to ASM and who have had interviews and dealings with him on a regular question, I think he is somebody who loves to be here. He's bought into the club and he's bought into the region. as much as what you would hope for from a player. His performance on Saturday wasn't great, if we're being honest. He had an opportunity there from the start to kind of to come into the team after an absence where he's been on the sidelines through injury and fitness and everything else like that. It was a real opportunity for him, and he didn't grasp it for me. I'm not saying he was the worst player on the pitch. Newcastle didn't play particularly well as a team and didn't function as well as they have done. So I think it's very harsh to put the spotlight completely on ASM, because he is suffering a little bit from a lack of match fitness. But you've got to take these opportunities when they come, and he didn't do that for me. Especially, we saw the impact that Anthony Gordon made when he came on and replaced him, and arguably did more in 20-25 minutes than ASM had done in the previous hour. I'm somebody with ASM, so my opinion on him is that I don't. And I remember being on the show last summer, Steve, with you, and I said that I thought that he doesn't have a long-term future at Newcastle. I think I would have had good money on him potentially going in the summer as well. He's a saleable, bankable asset. You can see what Eddie Howe's trying to do with him. He's trying to not coach the tricks or the skills or anything else like that out of him, but he's trying to coach, I think, some of that individuality out of him and make him become a better team player. I did read a piece in the Chronicle. I don't know if it's the same piece that you wrote, Steve, but that you read, Steve. But the piece one of the pieces that Lee did with him, where ASM talked about the defensive responsibilities that he'd done and how he protected, how he supported Dan Burn a bit more, and how he talked about that element. And so you could read in that interview that that's something that is being drilled into him by the coaching staff at Newcastle, is that he's got to be more of a team player. He's got to support and do his defensive work and do the pressing and everything else like that when required, which I firmly agree with. But I'm just wondering, and interested in what everybody else thinks as well, is whether that takes away from ASM, and sometimes you've got to just let a player just go off and do his own thing, but it's got to be within, I suppose, the framework of the team. So where am I going with this? I suppose I still don't see ASM being a long-term option for Newcastle. I don't think he's going to be here in the next 12 months. Personally, that's how I view it. I don't think Eddie Howe firmly trusts him. I think the fact that he's brought in Anthony Gordon is another indication of that. He's a fantastic player, really talented, but I just don't think he suits Newcastle's setup at the minute. I think he wants to stay, and he would really like to be that type of player and have a really big role in a team which is clearly going places. But I can't see any way forward other than him ultimately leaving for pastures new.
Yeah, I would agree with you, mate, to be honest. There was a question asked last night in the chat about the game at Bournemouth, and now that Isak's recovered from the protocol, concussion that he had to miss out on the game of the weekend, would you consider playing Isak and Gordon at the weekend?
I would, Steve. Yeah, I would. I know Callum Wilson scored on Saturday, and it was great to see him back in form and back on the score sheet. But Newcastle are struggling for goals, are struggling for creativity. There's no doubt at all about that. They're not scoring the volume of goals that we saw prior to the World Cup. Alan Shearer talked about it on Match of the Day, said it wasn't a concern, it wasn't an issue. I think it is a little bit of a concern. I think it is becoming a bit of an issue. I think Newcastle need to be a bit more clinical. There was two fantastic chances in that second half. Both fell to Callum Wilson. The one where Anthony Gordon played him in with that reverse pass and he didn't get his shot away quickly enough. He's one-on-one with goal. He had to get his shot away. He let the defender get back. And then the second one again fell to Callum Wilson when Kieran Trippier's cross came in and he headed it straight at the keeper either side. Would have been a goal. So I think Newcastle are struggling for they're struggling for that clinical output in the final third. They're going to need to score more than one or two goals a game at times. So for me, Anthony Gordon looked a breath of fresh air when he came on. I would hand him a start, absolutely. And if Alexander Isak is fit, I would start him as well. And that might be a little bit harsh on Callum Wilson. But I think Newcastle have to do something at that top end of the pitch, because they're not going to be able to win every game 1-0, and they're not going to keep clean sheets consistently every game like they have done. You know, that kind of runs over. The other side of it is Miggy Almiron, and it might sound harsh to say that Almiron, could do with a dip out of the team, but his form's dipped. He was never going to keep those standards going. Let's be honest. He was never going to keep scoring, bending, goals into the top corner or weaving past 3 or 4 players and slotting it in. That was never going to continue. I just wonder if he needs a little bit of a dip out of the team as well, just a little bit of a breather, just to freshen himself up as well. And you could maybe put Gordon on one side or Isak on one side and play Isak and Callum Wilson together. So I think it needs freshening up. Will Eddie Howe do it? I'm not convinced, but we'll wait and see on Saturday, I suppose.
Yeah, well, that's it. We certainly will. What did you make of the West Ham game then? I mean, a lot of people saying that tiredness is creeping in. And again, that probably comes down to the fact that we haven't got the biggest squad.
Yeah, Tuesday night was a really emotional, high octane night. The Tuesday night against Southampton, obviously. And getting to that final, I think it's only understandable that there would be maybe a slight dip, and the performance wasn't going to be at that level. I don't think Newcastle's levels has been as strong since the World Cup, but some of the performance has been good, and they came racing out of the blocks. Obviously, could have been 2 or 3-0 up inside that first 5-10 minutes, and looked really up for it. But then I think you have to give a little bit of credit to West Ham. They came with a game plan. They set up in a particular way. Newcastle weren't good enough to break them down or to get through the block that they had. Declan Rice was absolutely outstanding, and showed the difference, I think, in between being a good Premier League midfielder and a very good top class, almost world class midfielder. I thought he was absolutely outstanding, and Newcastle just didn't quite perform at the levels that they could. Bound to be a little bit tired and jaded. Bound to be a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show following the semi-final win, and that's why I would freshen things up. That's why I think sometimes it just needs a little bit of freshening up. We have to think as well that Newcastle will, other teams are going to come to St James's Park or come up against Newcastle, and they're going to adapt their game now, because Newcastle are a top 3, top 4 club, and I'm not saying they'll have worked out Newcastle, but they will. This is the Premier League. This is the best league in the world. This is top class coaching, top class players. Newcastle aren't going to get things as easy, I don't think, as as straightforward as what they had in the opening half of the season, because teams will set up to thwart, set up to frustrate and spoil. And Newcastle now have got to find different answers to different questions, and they couldn't quite do that against West Ham on Saturday. The squad, when you looked at the bench, you could bring Anthony Gordon on, but there wasn't much else to bring on. Your next attacking options were Jacob Murphy and Ryan Fraser, and are they the levels of Champions League? I don't think so. Done really well for Newcastle and been great servants, but the bench looked a little bit thin, and that was only with a couple of players out. So I would freshen it up ahead of Bournemouth, and I think Eddie Howe might do as well.
What was your thoughts on Elliott Anderson's cameo at the weekend?
I thought he did okay, Steve. Yeah, I thought he did okay. I thought he looked bright. He wanted to get on the ball. He wanted to pass it. I think he's a really good player, and he's got absolutely tons of potential. I know there's a little bit of frustration around the fact that he's not getting a bit more game time, and whether he could have gone out on loan in the January window. Sorry, I think he's top draw. I might be wrong here, because it depends on how young players develop, and we've all seen young players who looked fantastic at 18, 19, and they've just never quite kicked on. I think he's got a lot about him. I like the way that he demands the ball. I like the way that he wants the ball. I like the way that he tries to play forward and try to make things happen. I thought it was a very, very good cameo. I don't know what was your thoughts on it, Steve? I
thought he played well. Yeah, I mean, look, I think what I was saying last week about him was, look, he needs an opportunity to play in the first team, not a team which has had 8 changes like he did against Sheffield Wednesday, and you can judge him then. And I certainly think, when you play alongside better players, then you're going to respond. And I certainly think he did. He didn't look out of place. I don't think he's going to get a start against Bournemouth, but you just never know. It depends what happens with injuries, suspensions, and stuff like that. Who would have foreseen Bruno being suspended for 3 games? It's given people an opportunity, So, but yeah, look, it's great to see 3 local lads on a pitch as we did at the weekend.
100%,
fantastic, wasn't it?
100%, yeah. And what I like as well is I like him in that 3. I like him in that midfield 3. I know he's played out wide a couple of times as well. When he's come on, I don't think he's a wide player. I don't think he's a winger. I think he's a that attacking midfielder. We want to see them young players come through, and hopefully we'll get more opportunities over the next 2 or 3 games. I thought he did himself no harm at all on Saturday with his little cameo.
No, definitely not. Darren says, does ASM need a run of games? Gordon looked good against West Ham, and maybe we should start with Isaac, Gordon, ASM against Bournemouth, resting Wilson and Miggy. Obviously, we've just been talking about that. Will a run of games help ASM, do you think? I mean, are we being a little bit too harsh on him because of, the fact that we've had, he's had injuries as well?
Yeah, I do think every player needs a run of games. I think it's very difficult just to come in. I haven't had 10, 15, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there off the bench. He does need a run of games. We've seen with other players what a consistent run in the team can do for you, whether it's a Sean Longstaff or Miggy Almiron or whoever it is. Once you need that consistency to understand the patterns of play, to get your confidence going as well. So he absolutely does need a run of games. For me, it's just whether he is ultimately he needs to produce very, very quickly. Unfortunately, whether that's right or not, whether that's fair or not, he does need to produce very quickly because there's competition for his spot. Once Bruno comes back, will Joelinton move into that wide midfield, that wide forward role? You've got Anthony Gordon, you've got Miggy Almiron. You've got Isaac. There's lots of options there now. So I do think, to be fair to any player, that they need to have a bit of consistency and need to feel trusted and need to feel that they're not just going to have, an hour to prove themselves or 20 minutes off the bench to prove themselves. But because of the competition for places, he's maybe not going to be afforded that luxury.
Yeah, I would agree. Was a question from Scott. He says, morning lads, great as always. Do you think everyone in period 1 to 3 will get a ticket for the final at Wembley? Scott, don't quote us on this, but yeah, I do think so. Does anyone know the real reason why ASM wears so many bandages? It does look bloody silly, let's be honest. I have really no idea. Maybe a big fan of the Mummy, Ross.
Quite possibly. As long as it doesn't weigh him down too much. But everyone's got their little superstitions and things like that. Might be one of those. But yeah, I do know what you mean.
Yeah. Scott also says, question for you both. He says, Joelinton is 2 yellow cards away from being suspended. If he gets a yellow card against Bournemouth on Saturday, would you rest him against Liverpool so he doesn't miss the final? It's a yes from me.
If that's the case, then yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware. There is a reset point, isn't there? There is a reset point when the yellow cards don't count. But I haven't noticed that one, I'll be honest. But if that is the case, then I would certainly be looking at resting Joelinton because he's far too valuable for Newcastle in that Carabao Cup final. Trouble is that there's not many options, with Bruno being suspended, that there's not many midfield options. It comes back to what I've said previously on previous shows and on social media as well. I think Newcastle left themselves a little bit light in the midfield department after the transfer window. I would have preferred it. You've let John Joe Shelby go. All it takes now is Bruno suspended, and all of a sudden it looks a little bit light in that midfield. So Joelinton is a vital cog of that. And if you haven't got Bruno or Joelinton, it becomes even more of an issue. I suppose it's just weighing up whether it's more important for him to play against Bournemouth or to keep him for the Carabao Cup. And I personally would keep him for the Carabao Cup, but it will affect your league performances as well.
Yeah, okay. Plenty of questions coming in, so we'll stick with them. Morning, everyone. I'd like to see ASM on the right with Trippier behind him. Would that be a bit more helpful to ASM? I mean, we know he's not the greatest of defenders. I mean, we've seen on TV interviews in the past few months that ASM does respect Trippier. Would that help him?
It might do. It might do. I think there's obviously a fashion in football now for having what we call inverted wingers, where it's a left footer on the right and a right footer on the left. Coaches like it because it means that the winger tucks in a little bit more and plays a little bit narrower out of possession when they haven't got the ball, and also when they're in possession, it often allows for the overlap as well from the fullback. So you often see Miggy Almiron coming inside onto his left foot and Kieran Trippier then overlapping, or Sean Longstaff overlapping on that outside, and it creates extra overloads and problems for the fullback. So for ASM, it may help. I like, I'm old fashioned. I like to see a right winger on the right side and a left winger on the left side, and they get to the byline and they whip the ball back. It frustrates us sometimes when you do see a winger, whether it's ASM on the left or Miggy Almiron on the right, and they get to the byline and they're on their wrong foot and they kind of put a cross in. And if you're Callum Wilson or Alexander Isak waiting for that cross to come in, it can be frustrating. So it might help. It might help him, certainly from an attacking perspective, but I don't see Eddie Howe doing that, to be honest. I think he's keen on having the left-sided player on one side and the right-sided on the opposite.
Time and Tide, good morning, says the manager should put out a team that's going to play the best and not to give players a game. They should respect that. Great show, thank you. Alan says tiredness only becomes an issue if you allow it. Lads, we've only one game a week for the rest of the season. Our rivals will have Europe plus, so they will be more tired. Surely no excuses for tiredness. Good point. Paul, morning. Thank you for sharing the show. BT says, what do you make of the comments by Ben Dawson that he had no idea about the rumours that he had not been told of Dujan Richards or anybody else coming in for training? I've not seen that, but communication hasn't been a problem with the new owner so far.
No, I think you have to take a little bit of what's said with a pinch of salt. So Dujan Richards was spotted obviously at St James's Park at the weekend. Ben Dawson's coaching the 21s. He's not going to be told about every player that comes to watch a game, or every player that they're scouting, or any player that's coming in. But equally, at times where he is told about things, he's not going to necessarily tell the media what's been happening and what's happening behind the scenes and what he's been told. So. I don't think there's a major issue there with communication or anything else like that. The club seems to be running really well on that front, and everybody's bought into the same philosophy.
Yep. Geordie Tune for Life says Howe will be planning his side for the final, but the question is, does Howe play Isak, Joelinton, or ASM on the left hand side? Remember, Isak cost 60 million. He has quality, and he'll want to start very soon. Yeah, it is. It's what Eddie Howe gets paid for, though, isn't it, Ross? Not us.
It is, and I think it's very difficult sometimes for a manager to look 2 games ahead or 3 games ahead, because anything can happen between now and in that cup final. You can have all your plans in place, but it just takes one injury, one suspension, one or a bit of loss of form or whatever. I've got no doubt in my mind that Eddie Howe knows what team that he wants to play in that cup final already, and that if everybody stays fit and injury free and everything else like that, and I think he probably knows what team he wants to play. And I think, if we're being honest, everybody on here probably knows what team that will be as well. But it's very difficult for a manager to look 2 games ahead because all it takes is we saw with Bruno, it's one mistimed tackle and you're out for 3 games, or one mistimed tackle and you're injured and you're out for 3 months. So difficult to plan.
Yeah, no, it really is. 8 yellow cards he's on. If he gets 10, I think it's a 2-match ban. Yeah, it has already reset that. I wouldn't mind seeing Maxi play with Isak, as they apparently have a connection with training together quite a bit. Then drop Willock and play Gordon in his place, the pace of that attack. I'm the same as you, Ross, regarding old school wingers, says Roger. What about Man City? Sparky D says, if Man City get found guilty of breaking Premier League rules, what punishment do you think they'll get? This is big news that broke yesterday, isn't it?
Oh, massive story, massive story. Did you know, the amount of people that just as a bit of a side note, the amount of people we can track how many people are on our website at different points of the day or in real time. As soon as that City story broke, and a lot of our different titles that we've got around the country, you know, so how does it impact Arsenal with their title chase? How does it impact Newcastle with FFP? How does it impact Liverpool with, you know, with previous titles that have been won? Everybody was reading about this story. You know, we could see on our website that everybody was wanting to read about it and understand what the impacts are of the charges against Man City. So I don't have any kind of inside knowledge or anything else like that on what the sanctions will be for City, but I think I would be surprised if it was retrospective, if that makes sense. I don't think they'll have any titles or cups or anything else like that taken away from them, which obviously some supporters of Liverpool and Man United who finished second behind City in recent years will probably be hoping for. I don't see that happening. They could obviously get a hefty fine, but does a hefty fine actually make that much difference to Man City? I'm not quite sure it does. The other option is kind of a points deduction or starting off the new season with points deducted. So, and the other one is the other potential punishment, I think, is probably a transfer ban, a signings ban. You know, not able to sign players for 1 or 2 or 3 transfer windows. So there's a variety of options open to the panel that will be adjudicating on this case. Like I say, I'd be surprised if it was retrospective. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of points and deduction or a transfer embargo.
Yeah, it's again, you know, one rule for one rule for the other on certain things, isn't it? To be honest, and Manchester City have really got themselves in a bit of a pickle, but it will be interesting to see what happens. Talk as well about the Super League not going away, Ross. What did you make of that? Because we thought that was dead and buried, but we've seen stories in recent weeks of it potentially, you know, resurfacing.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been 100% dead and buried. I think it was put on kind of hold. But various factions around the rest of Europe, and if we're being honest, also in the USA as well, are still very, very keen on this, on some form of European Super League. What's interesting is, you know, you look at the spending that the Premier League had in January, and it absolutely dwarfed the other major leagues. There's just not I mean, I know Chelsea kind of distorted it with what they did, but there's not the finances, there's not the revenue, there's not the ability to compete on transfer fees and stuff like that around Spain, around Italy, around even Germany that there is with the Premier League. So what that then creates is a bit of a bit of uncertainty, a bit of, I suppose, jealousy amongst, you know, your big hitters elsewhere in Europe who think, how can we compete with this? How can we reel the Premier League back in? How can we create a bit more of a level playing field, if you like? And one of the things, obviously, that they're looking at is that European Super League, because of the amount of foreign investment into the Premier League and into in particular from America. You know, we know what the situation is over in America with relegation and promotion and the leagues over there. There's none of that. They like to know what they're getting for their investment. They don't want to think, right, I'm investing £3 billion in Chelsea, but we might not qualify for the Champions League next year. We might not have all these revenues come in. They want guaranteed revenues. They want guaranteed finances coming into them to kind of compensate them for the money that they've put in initially. So you can certainly see why the European Super League won't go away. The various different legal ramifications that are being held behind closed doors and in courts around Europe, you know, some of that it's very difficult to kind of keep tabs on because there's so much going on. But I certainly don't expect the European Super League to go away. I expect it to come back. Maybe it's in a different form. But yeah, it's certainly not going to go away anytime soon, I don't think.
No, definitely not. It's one that's going to drag on and on and on. Going back to Anthony Gordon, what was your feeling about Anthony Gordon's performance at the weekend? 15 minutes, 15 touches, certainly got the fans out their seats.
He looked sharp, didn't he? I didn't realise how quick he was, mind. He looks like he'd catch pigeons. He absolutely looked rapid. I think he was the timing of the substitution was perfect. Newcastle needed that lift, and he provided that spark. He obviously played on that left and drifted inside a little bit. The ball that he put through for Callum Wilson was fantastic. Great bit of vision and a great pass through. Look, he's obviously a very good player. He's very, very talented player. I don't think Newcastle fans have necessarily seen him at his best, and hopefully Saturday's little appearance give them a glimpse of what he might be able to bring to the club. It was certainly a really, really sparky debut, and I think if he can continue that kind of impact off the bench, I think he'll probably have to have a couple of games off the bench. If he can continue that off the bench, then he'll not be far away from a starting berth, and potentially give Newcastle something a little bit different and justify kind of the massive spend on him.
Yeah, I certainly think he's going to, he's going to excite the fans, and I genuinely think he's a player that will do the business for the Newcastle United. There's no doubt about it. Casemiro sent off for Manchester United, and it had Newcastle United fans searching, didn't it? Searching their phones to see how many fixtures they had left. Obviously, they got a lot, but they are appealing. It sounds like they're appealing the sending off, Ross. That's a dangerous game to play.
It is. It is. If they do appeal, I think you've got to be fairly certain if they do appeal that they've been told that there won't be, or they've been given a steer that it won't impact the 3 games. That if it falls through, it won't be upgraded to 4 games. So I think everybody was the same. Once they saw he'd been sent off at the weekend, everyone's Googling to see how many matches he's going to miss, how many games Man United have got left, and he's been fortunate. He's been very fortunate that it hasn't meant that he's going to miss out on Wembley. I've seen the incident briefly. I thought it was a definite red card, but you never know with these things. If they appeal, they might get it rescinded. But yeah, he's been lucky not to miss out on Wembley, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Declan Rice certainly created a bit of a stir amongst our supporters as well. I think a lot of people were very impressed with his performance at the weekend. What do you make of that? And is that somebody who you'd like to see at Newcastle? I mean, a lot of talk about James Maddison, of course. Tielemans were being linked, left, right, and centre with them. What's your thoughts? Would you like to see Declan Rice in the black and white shirt?
I think Newcastle need a absolutely top quality number 6, a top quality defensive midfielder who can break the play up, but also retain possession, also drive the team forward. And Bruno does that to an extent. He does that very well, but he's almost 2 midfielders rolled into one. Is Bruno? He's a 6 and an 8. He's somebody who can do the defensive side to an extent, but also take players on, put incisive passes through. I'd like to see Bruno play a little bit higher up the pitch personally, but for that to happen, Newcastle would need to bring in a top quality replacement. And I don't honestly think that there is much better not just in the Premier League, but also in Europe, across Europe, than Declan Rice. I know some people don't rate him. I've had conversations over the last few days with people who don't rate him as highly as what I do, which is fine. That's football. It's all about opinions. I think and I've thought this for 2 or 3 years, and I've said it for 2 or 3 years. I think he's absolutely top draw. He's athletic. Some of his positioning on Saturday night was outstanding. Not just in terms of winning the ball back, but just if you watch the game, some of the positions that he took up, which block a pass, which stop a pass from happening, it didn't result in an interception, but it just meant that the player on the ball had to then stall the progression, had to turn away because he blocked that path off. He blocked that avenue off into a pass into the forward players. I think he's absolutely outstanding. He's going to go for big money in the summer. Absolutely huge money. It could be a record British transfer fee that he goes for. Him and Jude Bellingham will both have a lot of money spent on them this summer. I'd love to see Newcastle go in for them. Whether they can afford that at this point in time in the club's kind of development, I don't know, because you will be talking more than three figures. You'll be talking 100 million plus, I think. And it's a lot of money to pay for a holding midfielder, a defensive midfielder. I do get that, but I think he's absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, definitely is. Talk a little bit about Callum Wilson as well. We've spoken about him obviously on the show. It was great to see him, hitting the back of the net again. And, he should have had a hat-trick, Ross.
He should have done. Looked really sharp. Looked the sharpest that we've seen him probably since the World Cup, I thought. Took his goal really well. And he's got a good record against West Ham. He took his goal really, really well. It was just frustrating, I suppose, and disappointing that he couldn't take one of those two chances in the second half, because chances were few and far between in that game, and two really presentable chances. I thought he should have got his shot away, whether that's a little bit of rustiness or a bit of tiredness creeping in at that point. He should have got his shot away once Anthony Gordon fed him through. Maybe he's even cut across the defender and gone with his left foot, but it was a great chance that. And then the header was a really good opportunity as well. So great to see him back on the score sheet. He'll be kicking himself, I'm sure, that he didn't take one of those other opportunities. Newcastle just need to get that clinical edge back and put games to bed, because, like I said earlier on, they're not going to keep every game. Newcastle aren't going to keep a clean sheet. There will be games where the opposition do score, and Newcastle are going to have to find a way of winning games and scoring more than just one or two goals. It's going to be interesting to see what Eddie Howe does with Callum Wilson over the next couple or 3 weeks. If Alexander Isak is back and fit and everything else like that, it does create a little bit of a headache, because Isak is a £60 million player who would be knocking on the door, won't want to be coming off the bench. It creates another option, and it creates another headache for Eddie Howe. But he loves Callum Wilson. He really, really rates him. He likes what he provides for the team, other than his goals as well. His work rate and his pressing and his hold-up play. So Callum Wilson's the man with the shirt, and it was great to see him back on the score sheet. But he knows he's got Alexander Isak breathing down his neck, and he's got to keep performing and keep delivering for Newcastle. Yeah,
it's great for us to have that kind of competition though up front, and I'm sure we'll get more exciting players in the summer. Jody Toombalais, a serious question, Ross. Do Sky sponsor Man U in any way? Far more coverage than any other club, and I don't just mean games. Interviews, for example, they get full coverage. We get a few minutes of Eddie.
I'll tell you what it is. It's very, very simple. Whether we like it or not, Man United have got the biggest fan base in the country. They've got the biggest fan base across the world. If you are a media outlet who want viewers, who want people watching their content, who want people reading their newspapers or on their websites or logging on, watching matches or interviews or anything else like that, you're going to focus in on the big clubs. You're going to give them big clubs more coverage, simply because they've got more fans who want to watch that sort of stuff. It's fairly simple economics, really. If you do an interview with Gary O'Neill at Bournemouth, not as many people are going to watch that interview as an Eric Ten Hag interview with Sky Sports, because Man United have got more fans than Bournemouth. It's simple as that. I know people think there's a bias or there's other things. It's just really basic kind of simple economics at play with the media, I'm afraid.
Yeah, you've nailed it, really, to be honest. But yeah, it does feel like that. It really does. Tom says, "Great show. Thank you very much, mate. It's always good to get the people in the chat. Great questions, etc. It's been great to have everybody on this morning." Paul says, "Saw a Newcastle United podcast yesterday talking about moving from St James's Park if we can't redevelop a Gallagher End and the Leazes Terrace." Yeah, I think that would be a last option, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think we want to make. I think everybody pretty much around the fan base and around the club wants to exhaust every option, every possible option of staying at St James's Park. It's an iconic stadium. It's in an iconic location. We've seen some fantastic stadiums be built elsewhere, new stadiums. The new Spurs stadium and the Emirates Arsenal and various others that we could go through. There's some fantastic stadiums around the country these days that have been built on different locations or close to the same location. But yeah, I think everybody wants to stay at St James's Park just purely for the history and the location that it is.
Okay, Karma Corner, good morning. Good to see you on the football chat. He says, "What's people's thoughts on the white card for good sportsmanship? Currently only used in Portugal. Seems to me the free use of drugs in Portugal has made them think it's a good idea." Karma, I love your humour. From my perspective, I had to laugh when I saw this. I had to do a little bit of in-depth reading about it first. But yeah, a white card for good sportsmanship. I don't think Newcastle United with the shithousery, as we'll call it, Ross, will be getting many white cards if it comes in this country.
No, I saw it very briefly a couple of days ago. I've not looked into it in any depth. I haven't done any reading up on it, so I've difficult to comment. But yeah, Newcastle won't be getting any white cards. I can't see Anthony Gordon or Miggy Almiron or anyone else like that picking up Dan Burn or Kieran Trippier picking up white cards for good sportsmanship. It's I don't know. On the flip side as well, so with Wickham on Saturday we had a sin bin. We had a player sin bin, which is for verbals and stuff like that. Is that something that could be brought into the Premier League as well? Do you think at some point some sort of sin bin option where it's for stuff that's not worthy of a red card, but you just need to give a player a bit of time out. These things will kind of keep being floated. These ideas will keep being floated. White cards, yellow cards, orange cards, sin bins, all sorts of different developments. But I've not really looked into the Portugal one much. I'll have to have a read.
I did have to read it because it'll be one of those things which people say is woke. Then it will end up in one of those kind of arguments. So I thought I would steer clear of it, but I might bring it up on the Three Amigos. That should be interesting. Right. Sky showing what's coming up sport-wise. Show rugby, tennis, golf, etc. Then show a clip of the Carabao Cup with only a Man United clip, no Newcastle. Jody, to my life, you're doing your head in about this. Sparky D says, white card, what's the point? Yep. Casemiro should be banned until the 27th of February, says Alan. That's just after the cup final, Alan. Oh, yeah. And John says, Arteta would love it as we sportingly wave Saka through our defence to score. Spiffing shot, young man. Now see if you can score another. Taking it to the extremes. I hope you're recovering from COVID, John, by the way. Ross, great morning as always. As I say, the chat have been fantastic. They've been on fire with questions this morning, and we got there in the end with your internet. Look forward to having you on again next week. Where can people find your work, Ross?
Yeah, doing loads of bits and pieces. We've got just a quick one for the Chronicle, actually, a quick plug for the Chronicle. We're going to have a 48-page special print edition previewing the Carabao Cup final, first cup final in 24 years. So give that one. That'll be available in all good news agents, as the saying goes. But we also may have as well coming up. Well, I think we do have a couple of competitions to win pairs of tickets for Wembley as well for people who haven't managed to secure them. So keep an eye out on the Chronicle for those things as well.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, mate. I will see you next Tuesday. Take care.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers, everyone.